A billionaire walks into a small-town diner for nothing more than a quick cup of coffee. But what he finds inside changes everything. The waitress taking his order? She wasn't just any waitress. She was the girl who once saved his future. And now, she was struggling to hold her own life together. What he does next will leave you speechless. Stay with me until the end, because this story isn't just about money or power. It's about remembering the people who believed in you when no one else did. It was supposed to be a flawless Tuesday morning. Jonathan Reed, a man whose name alone could move markets, was meant to be on his way to an executive meeting in downtown Phoenix. His assistants had already sent the documents to his tablet. His driver was supposed to glide through the highway without a single hiccup. But fate had other plans. A sharp thud on the asphalt, a sudden jolt, flat tire. And just like that, Jonathan found himself stranded outside Yuma, Arizona. The only thing in sight? A roadside diner called Patty's Place. He sighed, adjusted his cufflinks, and pushed open the glass door. A rusty bell jingled overhead. The air inside smelled of frying bacon and strong black coffee. The booths were patched with duct tape. Sun-faded photos of softball teams lined the walls. A jukebox leaned in the corner, coated in dust, like it hadn't played a song in years. Jonathan, sharp suit, polished shoes, the kind of watch that costs more than most people's cars, looked completely out of place. Truckers in ball caps eyed him curiously as he slid into a corner booth. He ordered coffee, black, no sugar. Then pulling out his phone, he started scanning through property reports. And that's when it happened. A voice, soft, a little tired, but warm. "Morning. Can I get you started with some breakfast?" Jonathan glanced up. His hand froze. The phone slipped slightly from his grip. It was her. Not just a waitress. Not just some stranger in a diner. It was Elena Torres. For a split second, Jonathan's world went quiet. Elena Torres, the girl who once sat beside him on the school steps, quizzing him on fractions when he was ready to give up. The one who told him not to listen when other kids mocked his thrift store sneakers. The one whose laughter used to echo through the hallways like it could chase away any bad day. She had been his best friend, the one who dreamed bigger than anyone he'd ever met. And yet, here she was, a faded apron tied loosely around her waist, hair pulled back in a messy bun, hands trembling slightly as she held a notepad, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips, but exhaustion weighing heavy behind it. Jonathan's throat tightened. 20 years. It had been over 20 years since he'd last seen her. Back then, they'd promised each other they'd escape their struggling neighborhood, that they'd never settle for less. He had kept that promise. More than kept it, he had built an empire. Skyscrapers, magazines, interviews, power, influence. But Elena? He couldn't stop staring at the way her shoulders drooped, the small scar across her knuckle. The flicker of something, weariness, maybe pain, hidden behind her eyes. And she didn't recognize him. Not yet. Jonathan swallowed hard, trying to form words, when she finally glanced up and locked eyes with him. Her pen stilled. Her mouth parted slightly. And then, wait, Jonathan? Jonathan Reed? The sound of his name on her lips was like stepping back into the past. Jonathan stood slightly, a half smile tugging at his face. "Hey, Elena, it's been a long time." Her laugh was small, disbelieving. "I'll say, what are you doing in a place like this?" He could have said it, flat tire, bad luck, wrong exit. But her tone, that edge of disbelief mixed with curiosity, made him pause. "Just passing through," he said instead. But deep down he wondered if this was really coincidence or something else. Before he could say more, someone called her from the kitchen. She scribbled something quickly on her notepad, offered a quick smile, and hurried away. Jonathan watched her move across the diner, balancing steaming plates, topping off iced tea, smiling even when the smiles weren't returned. And for the first time in years, Jonathan Reed, man of power, man of control, felt utterly out of place. Because here was the girl who once believed in him more than anyone, and now she was the one who needed saving. If you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that like button and subscribe. Together we can make these voices reach more people. Now, let's get back to it. Minutes ticked by. Jonathan drummed his fingers against his coffee mug, uneasy. In his world, people waited for him. They made time for him. But here, he was just another customer. Finally, after dropping off food and joking politely with an old man at the counter, Elena slid into the booth across from him for a quick break. "Okay," she said, exhaling. "It's definitely you. Jonathan Reed. You even have the same serious face." He smirked slightly. "Guess I never grew out of it." Her eyes flicked over his tailored suit, the shine of his shoes, the gleam of his watch. "You look different," she said, then softer, "in a good way." Jonathan leaned back. "So where did life take you?" He hesitated. The truth was simple. He had become a billionaire real estate mogul. But he knew how quickly those words could change a conversation. "I've been in real estate," he said carefully. "Keeps me busy." She raised an eyebrow. "Real estate? Like selling houses?" "Something like that," he said, dodging. Her smile was polite, but her eyes, sharp as ever, searched his face for more. She didn't push, not yet. "So, just passing through Yuma, huh?" she asked. "Yeah, pit stop." "That's rare," she said. "Most people who come here are regulars, truckers, or, well, lost." He chuckled softly. "Guess I fall in the last category." She stood again as the kitchen bell rang. "I'll put your order in. Don't go disappearing on me." Jonathan watched her weave through tables, still carrying that spark of kindness, but buried under years of strain. He remembered the dreams they once shared, opening a bookstore, traveling, never settling. And seeing her here, waiting tables, her laughter dulled by fatigue, it made his chest ache. But more than that, it made him want to know what had happened. Elena returned a few minutes later, sliding a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of Jonathan. "On the house," she said with a shrug. "You don't have to do that," he replied. "I want to," she said softly, pouring him more coffee. "It's not every day an old friend shows up here." Jonathan studied her face as she stirred sugar into her own mug. There were faint lines now, the kind carved by both laughter and sleepless nights. Her hands were rougher, and he noticed the scar across her knuckle again. She looked up, tilting her head. "So what's real estate like? You flipping houses or something bigger?" "Bigger," Jonathan admitted cautiously. "Apartments, commercial properties, that sort of thing." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "That sounds intense." "It has its moments." Elena nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on her coffee. "Good for you. You always did work hard. Remember how you used to help me with history even though you hated it?" Jonathan chuckled. "Still do. I only helped because you threatened to stop tutoring me in math." For the first time since he'd walked in, her laugh rang out genuine, bright and familiar. "True, I was ruthless back then." Silence settled for a moment. She swirled the spoon in her mug, debating something. Then she said quietly, "It's weird seeing you here. Makes me think about all the things we used to talk about." "Like the bookstore," Jonathan said. Her lips curled into a faint smile. "Yeah. Guess life had other plans." Jonathan wanted to ask what those plans were, but he could feel the weight behind her words. Whatever the story was, it wasn't something she wanted to spill in the middle of a diner full of customers. Instead, he asked, "How long have you been here?" She shrugged. "A while. It's steady. Pays the bills." The flatness in her voice told him more than she realized. A group of noisy customers barged in. Elena snapped her mask back on, the cheerful waitress persona, and left the booth. Jonathan watched her work the room again, smiling when she didn't feel like it, carrying heavy trays, pausing to rub her wrist when no one was looking. It hit him harder than he expected. This was Elena, the same girl who once dreamed of seeing the world, who believed she could do anything. And now she was stuck in a cycle she hadn't chosen. When the rush slowed, she returned, leaning lightly against the booth. "You still in touch with anyone from back home?" "Not really," Jonathan admitted. "Life got busy?" "Yeah, same here." Her gaze dropped. "Except busy looks a little different for me." There was an edge in her tone she couldn't hide. Jonathan leaned forward. "You want to talk about it?" Elena hesitated, then gave a small shake of her head. "Not here. Not with Earl listening." She gestured subtly toward the cook in the back, who was pretending to wipe the counter but clearly leaning in to eavesdrop. Jonathan smirked. "Fair enough. You free after your shift?" Her eyes darted toward the clock. "If I can get someone to cover the last hour, maybe." "But," she trailed off, chewing her lip. "Why? What's this about?" "Just catching up," Jonathan said casually. But inside, he knew that wasn't the full truth. He needed to know why she was here, what had happened to her dreams. Before she could reply, a man in a trucker cap waved his mug. "Refill," Elena sighed, muttering, "Story of my life," before slipping away again. Jonathan noticed it then, the faint limp in her step. Subtle, but there. Another detail she was trying to hide. Something told him her story was far heavier than she was letting on. And he was about to find out just how much. The diner finally grew quiet near closing time. Elena untied her apron, let her hair fall loose, and slid into the booth across from him again. Without the uniform, without the forced smile, she looked a little more like the Elena he remembered. "I've got 30 minutes before my relief shows up," she said, folding her hands on the table. "You wanted to talk, so talk." Jonathan leaned forward, his voice softened. "I wanted to see how you've been." "Really been?" She gave a humorless laugh. "You sure you want the honest version?" "That's the only one I'm interested in." For a long moment, she just looked at him, as though weighing whether he could handle it. Then she sighed. "After high school, I got into Arizona State. Thought it was my ticket out. But halfway through, my mom got sick. Bills stacked up. I dropped out to take care of her. She passed a year later, and I never went back." Jonathan's chest tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "I married a guy I thought was stable. Thought he'd help me get back on my feet. Turns out," her mouth twisted, "he was more interested in blackjack tables than me. Every paycheck went to cards. When I finally asked questions, he disappeared. That was 2 years ago." Jonathan exhaled slowly. "And you've been here since?" "Yeah, tried other jobs, but without a degree there aren't many options. This place is steady. Not much else in Yuma unless you've got connections." She tried to shrug it off like it was nothing, but Jonathan could hear the quiet resignation in her voice. "Don't," she said quickly, lifting her hand when she saw the look in his eyes. "Don't feel sorry for me. I'm not telling you this for pity. It's just life. Some people win big. Some people," her voice caught for a second, "end up here." Jonathan shook his head firmly. "That's not how I see it. You didn't lose. You got knocked down. That's different." Her lips twitched into a faint, skeptical smile. "Easy for you to say when you're sitting there in a suit that probably cost more than my car." He leaned back steady. "Maybe, but that doesn't mean I don't remember where I came from, or the people who helped me get here." Her eyes softened slightly. She tilted her head. "So, what are you saying?" Jonathan hesitated, because what he was about to suggest wasn't small. It wasn't charity. It was something that could change both of their lives forever. And he had to decide whether to risk saying it out loud. Jonathan didn't answer her right away. He sat there, fingers tapping against the coffee cup, studying her face, the tired smile, the lines that told stories of sacrifice, the strength buried under weariness. Finally, he said quietly, "What if I told you I could help you get out of here?" Her brows furrowed. "Out of Yuma? Out of this," he clarified, his voice low. "The diner, the dead-end jobs, the cycle that's been holding you down." Elena froze, the weight of his words sinking in. Then she laughed under her breath, shaking her head. Jonathan, that's not how life works. You don't just swoop in and fix everything with a magic wand. Sometimes it is, he said, his tone steady. If someone cares enough to make it happen. Her arms crossed over her chest, her defenses rising like a shield. I don't want charity. This isn't charity, Jonathan replied firmly. This is me paying back someone who believed in me before anyone else did. You don't even realize how much you mattered. You're the reason I passed math. You're the reason I didn't give up when I was ready to quit. You made me believe I was worth more. Her gaze flickered away, and he saw her blinking quickly, as if fighting something back. Even if I said yes, she whispered, what exactly are you offering? Jonathan leaned in. A job. Not just a job, a future. I own properties in Phoenix. One of them needs a manager. Office work, good salary, benefits. I'd cover your training. Her head snapped toward him, disbelief etched across her face. You're serious? Dead serious. You've always been sharp, responsible. I know you'd be good at it. Elena let out a shaky laugh, like she couldn't decide whether to believe him. That's a lot to take in. I don't expect you to decide tonight, Jonathan said gently, but I'm not offering this because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering because I know what you are capable of. And this place, he glanced around the diner, at the flickering lights, the cracked vinyl seats. This place will never give you what you deserve. She stared at him, her lips parted, as though trying to picture what he was describing. A different life. A way out. You make it sound so simple, she said at last. Sometimes it is, he replied. The diner's neon sign buzzed above them. Outside, the desert sky was painted in fading gold as the sun dropped lower. Her relief finally arrived. A younger waitress who greeted Elena with a tired smile. Elena handed over her apron, grabbed her keys, and walked out into the evening with Jonathan beside her. The air was dry, carrying the faint smell of gasoline from the nearby highway. Her car sat crooked at the curb, a sun-faded sedan that had seen better years. She tossed her apron onto the back seat and leaned against the driver's door, arms folded tightly across her chest. So, she said, breaking the silence, you going to tell me what's really on your mind, or are we just going to stand here staring at each other like high school kids again? Jonathan slipped his hands into his pockets, steadying his voice. I already told you. I can help you leave all this behind. She raised a skeptical brow. And what? I just pack up and move to Phoenix? Take some cushy job because Jonathan Reed decided to throw me a bone? He shook his head firmly. That's not what this is. I'm not throwing you a bone, Elena. I'm offering you a chance. You always wanted more than this town could give. You're still that girl, even if you've forgotten. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She looked away, staring at the diner's glowing sign. I don't know, Jonathan. I've been here so long. I don't even know if I'd fit anywhere else anymore. You'd be surprised, he said softly. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Cars rumbled by on the highway, their headlights cutting through the dusk. Finally, Elena pushed a strand of hair behind her ear and whispered, I'll think about it. Jonathan could tell by the way she said it, though, that something inside her had already shifted. For the first time in years, she could actually picture a way forward. But she wasn't ready to admit it yet. The next morning, Jonathan sat in his motel room with a steaming mug of coffee in hand. He was halfway through a set of emails when his phone buzzed. Unknown number? He frowned, swiping to answer. Hello? A shaky voice came through the line. It's me. He froze. Elena. I thought about it, she said quietly. Jonathan set his mug down, leaning forward. And I'm scared, she admitted, her voice trembling. It's been so long since I've done anything big. But if the offer is still there, I want to try. A slow smile spread across Jonathan's face. It's still there. Always will be. I'll have my assistant send you the details. We'll get you started next month. Silence lingered for a moment. Then she whispered, Thank you for seeing me as more than this job, for remembering who I used to be. Jonathan's voice softened. You never stopped being her, Elena. You just forgot for a while. When the call ended, Jonathan sat back, feeling something stir in him that he hadn't felt in years. A spark. The same spark they'd shared as teenagers, sitting on the stoop, dreaming about what was possible. And for the first time in a long time, Jonathan Reed, the man who thought he had everything, realized he'd been missing something far more important. 3 months later, Jonathan stopped by one of his Phoenix properties. The office lobby buzzed with phones ringing and keyboards clattering. Behind the front desk, wearing a headset and typing quickly into a computer, sat Elena. Her hair was down, her blouse crisp, her eyes bright in a way he hadn't seen since they were kids. She looked up and broke into a grin. A real grin. Not the tired smile of a waitress pretending to be fine, but a smile that reached her eyes. Boss man, she teased. You're going to ruin my productivity if you keep showing up. Jonathan laughed. Just making sure you're still here. Where else would I be, she said, and he knew she meant it. As he left the building, Jonathan thought about how simple it had been. One conversation, one chance. And everything had changed. Sometimes helping someone doesn't mean handing them the world. It means reminding them the door is open and that they still have the strength to walk through it. And if you're hearing this right now, maybe there's someone in your life who's forgotten who they are. Don't just tell them they can make it. Show them how. Because you never know how much one moment might mean. Jonathan returned to Phoenix often, but this visit felt different. Elena wasn't just working in his office now. She was thriving. She had picked up the systems faster than anyone expected, balancing ledgers, handling tenants' calls, and even catching mistakes that some of his seasoned staff had overlooked. One afternoon, Jonathan invited her to lunch in the company's rooftop lounge, the city skyline sprawling behind them. I have to admit, he said with a grin, I was worried you'd hate the job. Elena laughed, shaking her head. Hate it? Jonathan, I feel like I finally woke up from a 20-year nap. It's challenging, but in the best way. I actually look forward to coming in. He studied her face, the energy, the spark, the confidence returning piece by piece. It was the Elena Torres he remembered from years ago. I knew you'd be good at it, he said. She gave him a playful look. No, you hoped I'd be good at it. Big difference. Jonathan chuckled, conceding. Maybe, but I wasn't wrong. Her laughter faded then, replaced by something quieter. She set her fork down, her voice lowering. You know, when you walked into that diner, I felt embarrassed. Like you'd see me and think, wow, she didn't go anywhere. Jonathan's expression softened. That's not what I thought. I know that now, she admitted, glancing out at the skyline. But at the time, I felt small. Like all those dreams we used to talk about had vanished. And then you sat there and reminded me. I wasn't finished. I just got lost. He leaned forward. We all get lost, Elena. The difference is whether we give up or keep looking for the road back. Her eyes met his, shining in a way that made his chest tighten. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, she whispered, thank you, not just for the job, for reminding me who I am. Jonathan swallowed hard. You did that yourself. I just gave you a nudge. Weeks passed. Elena began suggesting improvements in the office, small adjustments that made the team more efficient. Jonathan noticed his senior managers deferring to her naturally, respecting her insight. One Friday evening, the office gathered to celebrate hitting a major milestone. Champagne glasses clinked, laughter echoed. Elena stood among the staff, not as an outsider or someone trying to catch up, but as one of them. Jonathan watched from a distance, pride welling in his chest. He remembered the waitress with the limp, the tired smile, the faded apron. And now, here she was, standing tall, laughing freely, alive in a way she hadn't been in years. Later that night, as the office emptied, Jonathan and Elena lingered by the lobby doors. It feels like another lifetime ago, she said softly. That diner. That version of me. Jonathan nodded. It was another lifetime, and you don't have to go back there. She hesitated, then smiled faintly. Do you ever think maybe you were supposed to take that wrong turn? Get that flat tire? That it wasn't an accident you walked into Patty's place? Jonathan's gaze held hers. I've thought about it every day since. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of shared memories, of roads diverging and then converging again, of something deeper neither of them had quite named yet. Finally, Elena broke into a smile, the kind that carried both mischief and gratitude. Well, billionaire, looks like you saved me this time. Jonathan shook his head gently. No, Elena, you saved yourself. I just reminded you where the door was. Months later, Jonathan returned to Yuma on business. On a whim, he drove past Patty's place. The neon sign still flickered, the same truckers still parked outside, the same smell of bacon and coffee drifting through the door. But inside, there was one difference. Elena wasn't there. And somehow that single empty booth in the corner felt like proof of everything that had changed. Jonathan stood by the window for a moment, watching the world inside continue as if nothing had shifted. But for Elena, everything had. And for him too, because he realized that for all his skyscrapers and headlines, his greatest victory wasn't a deal or a property. It was this, giving someone he cared about a second chance to rise again. Anna, if you're listening to this, maybe you've got an Elena in your life, someone who once dreamed big but forgot their own strength. Don't just tell them they can make it. Show them the door. Remind them of who they used to be. Because sometimes all it takes is one moment, one act of faith to change everything. Jonathan drove away from the office that evening, but his mind didn't leave Elena. He thought about her laughter echoing through those childhood nights, her hands scribbling equations in a worn-out notebook, her voice steady when she told him he was meant for more. And then he thought about the woman in that diner, the limp in her step, the scar on her knuckle, the smile that never quite reached her eyes. Two versions of the same person. What if he had never stopped that day? What if he had ignored the diner, brushed off the flat tire, chosen the easy road? He realized something chilling. Elena might still be there. Still pouring coffee for strangers. Still smiling through pain. Still convincing herself that dreams were for other people. The thought made his chest tighten. Because that's how fragile life really is. One turn of the wheel, one wrong exit, one missed conversation, and an entire future can disappear. Jonathan gripped the steering wheel tighter, whispering to himself, never again. I won't let the people who mattered slip through the cracks. And here's the truth, neither should we. Think about it. Right now, there is someone in your life carrying silent battles. They may laugh, they may smile, but inside they're drowning. They don't need a billionaire. They don't need a miracle. They need you, your belief, your reminder that their story isn't finished yet. So the next time you feel the urge to scroll past, to stay quiet, to walk away, don't. Stop, look closer, reach out. Because the words you speak today could be the lifeline someone remembers forever. And that's the heartbeat of Black Voices Unheard. We tell the stories that remind us all, success isn't about money or fame or skyscrapers. It's about lifting each other up when the world tries to push us down. If this story touched you, share it. Subscribe. Be part of this mission. Because together we can remind the world that no voice is too small, no dream is too far, and no story is ever truly over.